Starting. All right. We are officially live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to, I believe, episode 5 of the podcast. We're growing up so quickly. Pumped to have everyone here. We have an exciting episode today with Mr. Todd Miller. Todd is actually, I've met him in person, based out of Wilmington, Delaware. Well, actually, he's not based out of Wilmington, Delaware. Where do you actually live, Todd? You're like right nearby, right, in PA?
Yeah, I live in Media, Pennsylvania.
So we've actually had this little theme of Pennsylvania people the last, like Andrew Brandt's episode of ESPN now for you.
Go
so
PA.
Yeah, go us, man. So pumped to have you. So I never want to ever butcher anyone's like intro. So real quick, so for us to get started, I'll give everyone like a quick 20-second pitch of who you are, and then we'll really jump into who you really are.
Sounds good. Well, that sounds dangerous. I'm the Chief Experience Officer of the Archer Group. Archer is a digital marketing and technology agency in Wilmington, Delaware. We do work for clients such as JP Morgan Chase, Wawa, co-brand, all kinds of different kind of markets and verticals, and everything from helping clients get their messaging out there, as well as develop products and services around, their current offering.
And we're going to jump into a lot of it, especially because Eddie and Chris, I believe, are actually addicted to Wawa, like a form of addiction problem. So we'll probably get more into that in a bit.
Wawa is a godsend.
I agree.
Actually, I have one like a block from me right now. So what I want to do is this. One of the things that our show's all about, and for our listeners on the podcast or iTunes, SoundCloud, soon to be Google Play right now, is first kind of jump into you a little bit and kind of your upbringing, how you became who you are now, especially the Archer Group, because I think in a little bit I really want to jump into Archer itself because it's such a fascinating company you guys are doing and the things you're exploring and really accomplishing. So right off the bat, let's go a little bit into where did you grow up? What was like your interest as a kid? What kind of got you on your career path that you are now?
Sure. So I'm a Pennsylvania guy. I was born here, grew up here, lived here pretty much all my life. I grew up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is the home of Little League Baseball. So mountains, trees, deer, hunting rifles, camo, all the things you would put out there with what I call Pennsyltucky a little bit. But it was one of those things where there wasn't a lot going on where I grew up. So arts and computers were really the things that really kind of like, drew me in. So I grew up drawing and painting, and I was like the husky kid in the back of the class, doodling all the time. And my way of kind of making myself feel special or really show off was through art. So art was something that I really dove into. I did some murals, I did a whole bunch of stuff within my hometown, but I didn't think I was good enough to be a full-time artist. So my other love was computers. So that was a natural way for me to get into design and things where I felt like I could make some money and not just be a starving artist. And quite frankly, my art wasn't that good. But the computer stuff I could do, the stuff I could do on the computer, I felt was something that helped distinguish me early on and really where I focused.
So where are you starting with? Like when you were like playing around the computer, do you remember what programs you first got into while you were learning?
Sure. I mean, I was on a Commodore 64. I was on a Coleco, an Atom, things like just like some of those early game consoles, just hacking around, trying different things. This was before the internet, so you had to read books and try to figure out how things worked.
What's a book, man?
I know.
What were you building? What did you like to build on? It was graphics, right? You were doing not like fine art stuff, but like print stuff.
Yeah, mostly graphics, mostly print stuff. How could I get something that was in my head to translate on a screen? Back then, the printers were like dot matrix and like, very blocky and things like that. So just like, how can I get something that looked elegant or looked good with the technology at my disposal at that time? And just getting it from mind to computer screen and then out on a printer was, really tough. So it was really challenging to do.
Yeah. So I kind of started off the same way for the same reasons. Like I wasn't really a talented artist, like no talent with the brush or the pen, really. I like to draw and sketch, but it was like computers and Photoshop specifically that really gave me that outlet to start creating and getting my ideas out there. So, were you working with Photoshop early on? Like what version?
In high school, we didn't have Photoshop yet. I'm a little older than you guys. So for me, it was like Mac Paint. I mean, it was stuff before, Photoshop really hit. I remember college was the first time that I was introduced to Photoshop, and I think that was version 1.5 or 2. So there weren't even layers then.
Right.
Just to put it in perspective. So, I mean, it's, I was rudimentary type styler, things that were kind of just really early on, just playing around with those.
Were you ever charged at this point? Like, especially once college hits, were you like turning this into your own business or like entrepreneurial spirit at this point, or just like for fun?
Not yet. This was fun. I didn't really understand. I mean, when you're in high school, you don't really think about things like that. Well, I mean, I did a little bit. I was a Blockbuster Video jockey. I mean, I worked at Blockbuster Video from like age 15.
Sorry, what's a Blockbuster?
I know, exactly. I'm really dating myself now. But I worked there from age 15 to whatever. So like I knew I had drive and I wanted to make money, but then the skills weren't really there. I could pick up side jobs like painting houses, or like I did a couple of murals and things like that around town, but nothing crazy. College is where I probably got 2 years in and I figured out, hey, I know how to make a logo now. Hey, I know how to make a website. I know how to do some basic stuff. That's when I really started kind of charging and doing some side work.
So were you targeting like small businesses back in like college? Like who are you charging for? Like actually making money off of?
Pretty much anyone I could find. I mean, I've always, I did a talk out at How in San Francisco a couple months ago. And I have like these values that I've picked up over my career that I really have been kind of the focus, or really kind of what has driven me through all of my decisions in my career. And early on for me, I really was just going after anyone I could find that needed help. It was one of those things where I would do caricatures. I would do mock-ups of a business card. I would do anything just because I felt like if I got some experience under my belt to go with kind of my passion for the craft, I might as well take advantage of that and see if I can get paid. I mean, I wasn't getting paid a lot. I was getting paid $25 here or there, $50 here or there, but enough that I could, use that to kind of, pay my way through college and do some other things as well.
So let's talk about then. When did you identify, what eventually led to Archer, like what your true passion was? So you're talking about like understanding your core values and what makes you you. When did you start recognizing then, this is kind of the path I want to go. This is what I'm really passionate about. This is what I want to be as a person.
Sure. I mean, early on, again, I knew I wanted to be involved with art, and I knew I wanted to be involved with computers. People are a big driver for me. So I knew I wanted to be involved with people that made me better or people I could learn from. So that was another big thing for me. I also knew that I wanted to work in a creative environment. I couldn't see myself in a cubicle, things like that. So, I mean, really, I think the thing that really helped me out the most is pretty early on, I kind of knew who I was and what I wanted. I mean, that's evolved over time as we all do. But I kind of just kept true to the things that I knew would make me happy. And really every decision I made has kind of built upon that. And really, I've worked at a bunch of different jobs before Archer, and all of them was kind of like a stepping stone, a path to kind of get to where I am today.
So, so I was going to ask from like a more philosophical point of view, one thing you bring up that's interesting to me right away is you recognize early on you want to do what makes you happy. Mm-hmm. I think for a lot of people, even though they know what makes them happy or they have an idea, they ultimately do just what makes financial sense to them or maybe security sense. And then they ultimately, you see it all the time with entrepreneurship, I think, people 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s kind of regretting what they've done and hitting the back button, right? They go back. So is there a reason you were like programmed that way to just look at it early on? Was like what your parents raised you up, or this environment you grew up in that kind of made you focus on, I'm just going to do what I want to do type mindset?
Yeah, I didn't have the best childhood. I mean, good people, but we didn't have a lot of money. There was a lot of challenges. I mean, my sister and I would play a game when we got home from school, which is like, hey, let's figure out what we can eat in the cabinets. And one day it could be icing. The next day it could be like hot dog buns and mustard. I mean, there wasn't a lot of funds going on in the house. So I knew early on that money was an important thing, but I also knew money could make you do some weird stuff because I had a lot of family and friends that were always just kind of like trying to do whatever they could do to get paid. And then a lot of stuff would fail. A lot of things would be really weird. So for me, I knew I didn't want money to kind of derail me, but I knew I wanted to kind of take control over it. So one of the things I preach, especially early in your career, is always have a side hustle. So for me, freelance, contract work, side work, like when you're young, just burn a bunch of hours, get paid for it, put that money away, sock it away. And then when you have that money in your kind of like side account and your just in case fund, then you don't have to be driven and make decisions based off of who's going to pay you that day. You're driven by the fact that you have money, so you can just go for the best opportunity to get where you need to go. So that's one thing that I've always had is I've always had kind of that backup plan. I've always had that side money so that I could always pick the right position for what I wanted to accomplish versus just trying to pay a bill.
Have you found that as you became better and better at what you did, that you were having to level customer expectations with, this mindset of this is how I like to do things? Obviously some clients are like, we're paying you, you agreed to do the project, and then things just got unreal and you're like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm done.
I've never left anyone hanging. I have always made sure that if I made a promise that I was able to fulfill it at all times. So I've learned from some of those lessons where I took on too much or I set the wrong expectations. And the best way that I've dealt with those is just be honest about them. Hey, I can get you to what X. I know I promised Y. Do you want me to take it to Y? Or if you want, I can kind of introduce you to someone else that can kind of help you go further. Or like I never left anyone in a lurch because you just don't know. I mean, yeah, you're busy today, but tomorrow you might not be as busy. And, I've run into people like early in my career and then like much later down the road where I think if I would have, left a negative impression later down the road, it would not have gone well for me, for Archer, for any of my other jobs. So you can't let people hang like that. So I think I've learned early on that just be up front and honest with what you can deliver on. I think that's one thing that a lot of agencies or a lot of companies, especially when they're early in their kind of early in their makeup, they take on anything and everything they can just to kind of get dollars in the door. But then can they actually deliver on that? And you earn much more trust. You earn much more from your clients when you can just tell them what you can do and what you can deliver on. Because if you can't deliver, you've lost that relationship.
So that kind of goes against the entire fake it till you make it mind state. And that happens a lot. And I think in tech specifically, because it's so easy to create a persona around yourself and to create, a lie about your brand or whatever, because not everybody is interacting in person, that not everybody is exposed like that. So it's easier to pretend that you are something you're not. So I think, but you lose a lot of trust and a lot of positive, you just lose a lot of trust from the people that you're working with if you're doing that. People start to catch on.
Oh, they do. And I think that, in both, the agency industry, I think the technology, I'll say every industry, there's a lot of fakers. And you learn over time who are the people that are actually able to deliver on something. And those are the ones you hold near and dear. But, you have to be careful in this day and age because a lot of technologies are very approachable. There's a lot of ways that people can kind of blow up really fast. But the reality of it is there's a good percentage of the people out there that are very vocal that just really don't know what they're doing.
Makes perfect sense. And one of the big questions I'm curious about is growing up in the environment you did and in the college, was there a defining moment you think, maybe that formative moment that put you in the direction you are now that you can think of, like, this is the first time I tasted success, or I just knew I trust myself to go where I'm going, that you can identify, or maybe a chain of events that cause that?
Good question. That's a tough one. Honestly, I think that, when my sophomore year of college, I went to Kutztown, Pennsylvania, Kutztown University for communication design. I had no clue what I was doing. Again, I knew art and design was something that was kind of cool. The first year you're there, you're doing a lot of fine arts, a lot of kind of just foundation stuff. The second year is when you actually start getting into design. And I'm learning about typography and layout and hierarchy and kerning and tracking and all these things that I had never heard of before. And I got to tell you, like, my first real design project, I screwed it up bad. Like, I mean, really? it was really bad. And it was one of those moments where it's like I could have just said, "Oh, this isn't me. I'm going to go into art education, or I'm going to go into business, or do something like that. Like, maybe this isn't me." But again, one of my number one rules is like surround yourself with good people. And when I went through and did college tours and things like that, I felt like the teachers there were really kind of in their student, there for the students' best interest. So I sat down with one of my teachers, the one that had given me the really bad grade, and she's one of the toughest teachers of that school, Kate Clare. And I said, what did I do here? What can I do better? And she sat me down and was just direct, up front. She gave me the tough love. And everything that I worked on after that was all A's. Like anything I could do to just really go above and beyond, put in a lot of hours. Like, some students would go in there and put in like 4 or 5 hours on a project. I'd go in there and put in 30 or 40, like not sleep. I would do whatever it took to make sure that I was kind of bettering my skills versus just accepting the fact that I just naturally didn't have that talent right out of the box. So I think,
did you almost believe the idea of like hard work beats talent? Well, I guess when talent doesn't work hard mentality, is that kind of like your mantra? Or
I mean, there are people out there that are just so naturally talented that, they have that gift and they're able to, just accomplish some amazing things. But I think those people are rare. And, I'll take someone with really hard work ethic and a little bit of talent versus the person that's extremely talented and doesn't know how to work hard all day long. So,
10,000 hour rule.
Absolutely.
Put in enough time.
So one of the things I'm curious about is leading up to Archer now. You're done college. Kind of talk to us a little bit about your career, because I know you've done a few things leading up to your Archer and then really getting into Archer. Like, what was your career path like? Like, how did you start from college, right out of college, till when you ended up with Archer?
Sure. I mean, right out of college, I had a lot of different opportunities. I had, at that time, it was probably the coolest job offer, which was an agency in New York that did this Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar and all the marketing for Barnum and Bailey Circus and all this really fun stuff. And I'm like, oh, I really want that job. But that job, like, I think the job offer right out of school for me in New York City was like $25,000 a year. And I'm like, I don't have family money. I don't have anyone to help me out. This is just me. So I ended up taking a job at PBS. It was one of those things where I traded in, swimsuits for Elmo. But again, it was one of those things where that other job was cool. But I didn't have a close relationship with any of the people. The people from PBS were just warm and inviting, and they just really kind of let me come in and really work on a variety of things. So I got to go in there and work on things for their television programming. I got to work on stuff for their print side, their marketing side, internal design. And then they started working on websites. And that for me was when I really got hooked on, website design and website production and things like that. So, that was kind of the first thing, is going to PBS right out of school and getting a chance to work on a little bit of everything. And then really find my web passion and really be able to kind of build up some basic skills there. I mean, I got to work on the first beta of Flash. I was working on, the first beta of Dreamweaver, and really working on some of the tools that we all know, now. And well, Flash is dead and Dreamweaver is almost there. But, it's one of those things where, I got to work on all these great things when they were first coming out, and really there wasn't a lot of people around that you could pick their brains and things on. So I had to really kind of just stay up late and work on things on my own and really kind of, hone my skills. PBS was the first stop. That's really where I fell in love with web. Then I got down to Philadelphia working for at that time, a .com startup called Health Access. Weird decision, but when I came down here, there was like Global Sports, there was, all these different companies. All of them had rock walls and climbing gyms and bring your dog to work days and things. And I ended up going with the insurance startup, mainly because I'm like, hey, everyone needs insurance. So because again, in those days, the internet startups were so brand new. So I ended up there for a while, which was great because I got to work with overseas partners. I got to, really, brush up on my project management skills. I got to work on a really good high-end e-commerce platform. I got to do a lot of different things there. I got to learn how to code in PHP and ASP and things like that, things I wasn't doing at PBS. So I really got to really kind of own my skills there. And then after that, I decided, agency looked like a lot of fun, and I wanted to try that out. And that's where I ended up at an agency in Philadelphia, a couple of them. And then I ended up freelancing like crazy just to kind of broaden out my portfolio. If any of you are from Philadelphia, like if you're in the agency world in Philly, it's all pharma. So, it's not the most exciting stuff in the world. So I was, doing my agency stuff for a farmer agency, and then probably spending more hours outside of the day working for Comcast or Red Teddimer or a bunch of other companies just doing freelance design work. So, and after a while, I leveraged all of that into creative director at Archer Group, and then really kind of just over the last 10 years have been taking on more and more responsibility, and now I'm the chief experience officer and partner in the company.
So your initial role
that's a mouthful.
Was your initial role with Archer Group? You said just creative director. What were you doing? Like, what kind of projects were you working on with them at first?
I mean, when I came into Archer, we were probably sub $1 million in revenue, probably about 800,000. We were 10 people in 2 rooms. We were working on some really small clients. I mean, clients that were probably $10,000 website builds, things like that. Had a lot of just like, they were quaint. It was fun. But when you came from big pharma where you're spending like $1 million on a website, and that's on the cheap side, it was a very big culture shock for me. Our biggest client at that time was Pfizer. We were doing their global intranet, which is just because the partners had known them from other work that they had done in the past. And
Okay.
that was about it. That was the start of my career there. And then over a year or so, we kind of hired some more people, got some things solidified, and that's where really I was able to kind of help them win some other big pieces of business. And that's where I started to move up the ranks at Archer.
So let's talk about Archer. So you joined a little bit in after they started and everything they're doing right now. So let's talk about your role early on. When you first joined Archer, what was exactly your role? Not just job title, but role. And then kind of over the years, how you worked your way up and kind of how Archer, as you're talking about, matured. Like, how has the company changed, altered over the course of these years to where it is now, and then what your role became now, like what you do?
Sure. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah, no, I got to ask the hard ones, man.
So, I mean, when I came to Archer, I mean, they were looking for a creative director. So, I mean, that was my role. My role was to make sure the creative product was as good as it could be. When you come into a small company, you end up wearing a lot of different hats. So that's really what I started to do. I mean, I really think as I look back on my career that, design and creative was really, I love it. But I really think a lot of times I was miscast as just being creative. Really what I loved was helping our clients solve problems. So really that's what drew me over time, is that I decided that I wanted to solve problems more than just with Adobe, Photoshop and, some of the tools that we had. I really wanted to help clients understand how to get the best out of the web and how to get the best out of digital in general. So over time, as that became my passion, I ended up kind of moving up and taking on more responsibilities. So one of the big things early on is that I wanted to oversee more than just the creative product. I wanted to oversee front-end development and back-end development, mainly because your ability to get it from creative to actually out there in production, like there's some gaps there and there's some efficiencies we could find. So I naturally saw myself kind of getting into, that a little bit more. Then user experience became something that I had done earlier in my career, and I wanted to kind of really bring to Archer. So I ended up overseeing that department and bringing that in. So really I ended up kind of just growing the company through helping us win new business and then figuring out what holes in our offerings were there. Because again, I'm not a fake it kind of guy. So if we say we're going to do something, we need to be able to do it. So as we grew, we brought in analytics, user experience, SEM, SEO, different kind of service different kind of skills within our core departments, front-end development, creative, things like that, business analysts, pretty much just kind of overseeing our growth and then figuring out what holes we had in our offering and making sure that we had the right people to kind of help out over time.
For perspective, how many people are on the team when you joined, and how many people are at the Archer Group now?
I was employee number 10, and now we are over 70.
That's amazing. And for those who are listening, I think one of the things that absolutely mind boggles me is that you guys are based actually in Wilmington, Delaware, which for probably a lot of people listening to the show are all over the map. I guarantee there's a lot of people who have no idea where Wilmington, Delaware even is. Like, they probably just realizing where Delaware is on a map. So let's talk about this for a minute. I think this is something that's very interesting. Why Wilmington, Delaware? And then how have you used this as an advantage? And is there any cons to it still? Like, what's the negatives of being in Wilmington for you guys?
Sure. I mean, Wilmington, Delaware, I got to be honest with you. It was kind of something I passed on my way to DC. It wasn't a place where I spent a lot of time. I mean, I'm from Media, Pennsylvania, Williamsport, Pennsylvania originally. Really what it was is when I was at my prior agency, Whitman Hart and Insight Interactive, one of the owners there left and ended up starting the Archer Group. His name is Lee Michaels. And, he's one of the reasons why I ended up down there. I mean, mainly because he was a Delawarean. He loved Delaware. His mission was he wanted to be able to run into his clients every day and be able to walk, kind of the main streets of Delaware and just run into people. Like he had that kind of like nature to him. So I was really excited to, start. I wanted to do a startup myself. I wanted to create my own agency after kind of learning from some of the challenges I saw with ones I had worked for. And I had split off and started freelancing for a while to kind of build that up. And he said, hey, come in here. You can kind of get that same mentality, but I'll take care of the business side of it. You can really focus on your craft. And, he's the one that lured me down to Delaware. And, over time, as we were growing and as, new people came in, my business partner, Mike, who he's our CEO and heads up kind of the sales and account functions at Archer. He came in, we really hit it off. And over time, it just really became apparent that he and I really wanted to run with Archer. And we ended up buying the other two guys out about 4 years ago. Gotcha.
So going more into it, Joe Morris actually wants to know, is the agency helping with new social media solutions like Snapchat, live streaming? So let's jump in a little bit about like what your offerings are and what you're doing now for your clients, like such as Wawa, things of that nature.
Sure. I mean, you can't be a digital agency and not have a strong social media practice. We're lucky that we have an excellent team on the social side that are doing some great stuff on Snapchat and pretty much any major, social medium. And really, we play two roles for our clients. It's going in and really just advising them on how to get the most out of social. Every client pretty much is doing social in some way or form right now. So they don't necessarily need an agency to do it for them, but they might need help on getting better results or how to get more, fans or how to kind of measure for ROI or measure for kind of like different KPIs that are driving their business. So we have kind of this consulting function that we have, as well as for a company like Wawa, we do everything. So every snap, every Tumblr post, every pin, every, Facebook, mention, pretty much everything is us, with the exception of kind of customer service. That's something we train their call center on how to be able to support.
So Elijah Harry has a question that follows up to this, which is, do you have any dedicated salesmen? And I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit further, which is talking about your client onboarding process. Like, how do you attract new clients? What's the process like? And in particular, what I think really intrigues me is, what do you talk to them about early on? Like, how do you manage expectations? What are the kind of key questions you ask them? And perhaps some things that people can relate to their own businesses, especially in the service layer, such as you guys.
Sure. I mean, the hard part is, every client for us is wickedly different. We do everything from, again, maybe a social media kind of audit to a, multi-million-dollar web build or application build. So, everything is a scalable architecture and how we approach things with our clients. The number one thing is we kind of get with them and we kind of upfront do our research to make sure that we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us. If we feel like they don't kind of fit our criteria for what we're looking for in a client, we don't take on every single piece of business that comes our way. So we're kind of careful with that. You got to protect your brand as much as their brand. And if there's not a good fit there, don't take on the work. So that's number one. So we automatically already have a desire to work together. That's been, that's kind of been, gleaned from all of our kind of top discussions with them. The second part is we have a pretty firm kickoff process. So, if we're doing a really involved kind of discovery effort, we have our user experience team sit with them, do stakeholder interviews, customer interviews, things like that, web surveys. We do some really in-depth fact-finding. We have a client that we just launched this week. I can't say. It's a little bit more on the protective side, but it's a huge web build, and it's really taking their entire company from a very offline focused company to one that is driven solely online. So a huge reinvention for them and for their business. But we did that for them, soup to nuts. Everything from discovery to build. In a really good high-end CMS. So we do stuff like that, but again, we're doing marketing campaigns for Wawa as well. So we have a very different kind of scalable process depending on what the client type is.
What point did you guys realized like, we don't have to take on every project that comes our way. We can say no to things. Like, was that from the get-go, or was it something that you kind of did in the beginning and you realized like, oh, well, this didn't work out like we had hoped?
I wish I could say it was from the get-go. I don't think any company, when you're staring at revenue figures and salaries and the cost of your business, sometimes you're like, ooh, how am I going to make that $80,000 a month payroll? And that was us freaking out, 10 years ago when I started at Archer. I mean, now our payroll is probably $8 million. So, you early on, you kind of just take on anything you can. The hard part with that is that, it helps you grow revenue, but it doesn't really help you keep focused and kind of differentiate yourself from your competitors. So you kind of snap back really fast and say to yourself, all right, we can't take on everything. We have some money in the bank. We're a solvent organization. What are the right kind of clients to make us successful? And then you kind of develop those criteria. I mean, we have a sales triangle, which is, does it make us smarter, richer, or does it allow us to do something we've never done before? And it has to have one of those three things. And if it doesn't, we don't do it. And again, if it's a client, we don't do RFPs. So if a client comes in and says, hey, here's a 20-page RFP, we're going to send it out to 20 agencies. Will you be one of those agencies? We instantly trash it just because we don't feel like that's the best way to sell or the best way to get to know someone. We'd much rather do a test project. So there's a lot of stuff like that we've developed over time that has really helped us, focus in on the kind of clients we know we can be successful for.
What exactly does a test project consist of?
Digging a mason jar, by the way, there, Todd.
Oh, thank you.
And Eddie gave me this huge beer mug, so I'm sharing your sentiments, man.
I'm jealous of your bladder right now, man. I don't know if you're going to be able to handle all that.
So one of my goals is to drink 3 of these a day. I don't let you look at this. For those on video,
Wow.
This thing's bigger than my head. So, but back to Eddie's question.
So it depends. It could be, we're in the midst of kind of like bringing in a new client right now where they have multiple lines of business. So instead of taking on every single line of business from the get-go, we might take on just one line of business. Gotcha. It could be something where we're just doing a microsite because they have a really big impending need for some kind of marketing campaign. It's usually, kind of some small sliver of what the bigger ask could be. And we go in, it's defined, it's something we know we can kind of do a good job with, we can prove ourselves on, and then kind of grow from there.
So at this point, I mean, you guys don't have any trouble bringing in work. How much of the potential clients' goals and values plays into your decision of whether or not you're picking them up as a client?
Oh, it's big. I mean, a lot of times they're not overly transparent. I mean, no client comes in and says, "Hey, our principles are X and our goals are Y." So a lot of times, you have to dig for those just a little bit. But at this point, we're pretty good at kind of just being upfront with, all right, what does this take for this? What is success for you? What does your budget look like? What does your ideal partner look like? There's certain questions that you can kind of just ask from the start to give you a good sense of how you're going to work. And honestly, their responsiveness to that and how much they really want to be involved and how much they really want to talk to you is another good indicator of their level of interest as well. So it's really like any relationship. If you're getting good vibes from them and they're getting them from you and you're able to kind of after a while complete each other's sentences and support each other, you have a good relationship there. But I mean, we all know we've been in the room on a date or something where you're just not able to kind of, really get that vibe from someone. It's similar in a lot of ways. You just know when it's going to be the right fit.
So follow up to this, when you're bringing on a new client for the first time and you're in that first introductory meeting with them, especially you one-on-one, what are some of the questions you want to ask from them? Like, what are you think's the big factors for you to be successful that you're asking them right away? That isn't like IP, private knowledge that you ask, but things you think any service-based company should be asking when they're working with someone.
I think there's a couple that jump out. So have you ever worked with an agency before? That's a big one. If you're coming into a company that has never worked with outside partners before, not that it's impossible, but I mean, you're starting from bare bones scratch and really kind of helping them understand what your value is. And that's kind of difficult. So I think that's one big one that a lot of people kind of just jump to. Okay.
How many of your potential clients are coming from an overseas agency to you guys?
Overseas, not many, honestly. I think, we haven't run into that a lot, mainly because we're not just doing, development or things like that. It's kind of a lot of the marketing function or UX function or design function has usually stayed here in the States. So usually we're kind of focusing in on clients that already have kind of a U.S. presence in some way. So not a lot there. We have a lot of clients who will come in and we'll do that side, but then work with their offshore partner.
Right.
We'll do that as well. But
so, Josh, the second part to your question, I forget.
This is my train of thought here too, man. It was onboarding questions. So it was like more or less onboarding questions for your first meeting.
Have you worked with a partner before? Yes or no? Do you have a sense of budget? Not that I need it, but have you at least gotten that far, to know that whether it's a real project or not?
So going on the budget one, I'm going to pick your brain here for a minute.
Sure.
I have found, or I should say we have found in Dog, for example, the clients that come to us with their budgets early on, there's a direct correlation to them being just significantly more serious and or they know what they're getting into, right? And I think exactly from your end, I think if you don't know a budget, you're ultimately overestimating and underestimating what it takes. Usually it's underestimating, but sometimes you're severely overestimating. But those who have budgets, right away, you can work with them and figure out, all right, listen, this is what is and isn't doable, or here's what we can do. And I guess and this is probably the biggest thing that I try to communicate with people all the time. And maybe you can even go more further in your industry because we do differ at a certain point, which is that usually people are scared about their budgets because I feel like it's programmed in their nature. Like, I don't want someone using up my entire budget if I don't have to. But the reality is, our goal is to help people, right? That's why our companies exist. We want to hear so we know is there a limitation we got to adopt around, or vice versa. If we can get you under your budget, we'd rather do that. Our goal is to build a relationship. So I'm kind of curious of your perspective and what you think and what you've, the hurdles and accomplishments you've had off of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely kind of focused for the long haul as well. I mean, we're the kind of company where we have clients stick around for years and not just for projects. So that's one of those warning signs. Like if you get someone that's not open to budget, then either you have to worry, do they have one? Or have they just came off some bad relationships in the past with agencies that weren't able to deliver for them? So then you have to kind of fix the cultural part of your relationship up front. So that's a warning sign for me when you can't at least get some of that. Mainly because I want to deliver value. I want to come in under budget or at budget. I want to scale my delivery based off of what your real needs are. A lot of times when you finally have a budget and you've gone through your internal process, like there's been so many features and functions added into your spec at that point that it's like, wow, I really want to understand all of these. And do you know that you can't get an intranet, a web app, a mobile app, and a complete marketing campaign for $50? Like, do you know that that's not possible? So a lot of times when budget isn't kind of upfront, that's one of those things where we really say to ourselves, all right, time out. Let's really talk. Let's understand why that's a challenge for you. And if it's one of those things, again, where we're just not a good fit because there's not a lot of trust there, maybe we should do that test project first. Let's bite off a small part of what your need is, and then get a better sense for us and what we're able to do for you. And then maybe we can kind of open up. Or if that doesn't work, again, maybe you're just not the right fit for the company, or maybe you're looking for something different than we're able to provide you.
So going back a step, back to operational side, your company scaled ridiculously, and congrats about that, by the way. It's awesome, especially since you've been there. So one of the biggest things I hear entrepreneurs all the time when they talk to me, and I'm curious about your perspective here, is how do you go about hiring in areas you just have no clue about? What I mean by that is, for example, let's say you knew nothing about front-end development, but you need to hire a front-end developer. And one of their fears most for entrepreneurs is, well, I don't know what's crap, what's great when I'm hiring someone in perspective. So when you go and scale, especially and introduce brand new avenues you've never done before, how are you approaching that? And what is your team's thought process behind it? And especially, again, like, how are you bringing these people to you guys in Wilmington, Delaware, and attracting this top talent to accomplish this?
Oh, sure. I mean, I can honestly say, like, that's something I've been through at least 12 times in my career. So I've been able to kind of launch different departments at Archer. So, I grew up as a designer. I knew how to, I could Photoshop my butt off. All the other skills I kind of learned up over time. And mainly what I learned is, again, like one of my number one things is surround yourself with good people. So, if I didn't know anything about mobile development, you know what? I know this guy named Josh who has this company called Dog. What does he look for? Like, so I had kind of like
company, by the way.
I heard so too. Yeah, absolutely. So what I've learned is that you need a good circle. So I try to keep people close to me that I respect, people that have different kind of points of view than me, people that have different talents, people that have different backgrounds. And And I've kind of held those people close to me throughout my entire career, and I've added more people over time. So when I'm ready to make a big switch, so if I said, tomorrow I want to bring in, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a service that might be of interest. So maybe I want to get into more video production. I mean, we do that, but it's not, we don't shoot video. We usually use partners for that. Say I wanted to go there. So what I would do is, I would pull, people out of my Rolodex, or people that I kind of know that well, sit down, have a series of lunches with them, understand what's kind of driving them, what are the things they look for, meet some of the people they know. A lot of times you'll get recommendations through your network that way as well. And then a lot of times I'll come in and I love to do an interview, but I love to do test projects, as you know, from a new business standpoint. But even Archer right now, I mean, pretty much any of our career paths at Archer, when you come in and interview, there's always some level of test. So coding test or social media test or design test. We have some level of test there too, because I don't want to just meet you as a person and understand your personality. That's really important for me, but I want to see you actually compete a little bit. I want to see you solve a problem. I want to see you, kind of take on some of those things and then present it back to us, because there's always a presentation component to that as well. So go ahead.
Sorry, have you guys acquired any smaller agencies over your time together?
We've talked to different agencies. I will say that we've come close to acquiring probably 3 over the last 6 years. But each time kind of walked away a little bit, just mainly because it would have just been adding staff to stuff we were already doing. There wasn't like a strategic advantage. Because we're in Delaware, sometimes I think we get the itch to say, hey, we're part of a bigger city. But every time that we do that, we really learn really fast that that's kind of not what we truly need. So I think there is an acquisition maybe in our future. Who knows? We've gone to the table a couple times, but we have walked away mainly because we can grow in Delaware. We have great access to talent. We have a great culture. We're able to recruit our butts off down there because we're doing things that are very different down in Delaware than most of the other agencies in Philadelphia. So recruiting is not our issue. So, really adding a small agency, unless they're doing something that we just don't do, it doesn't make a lot of sense at the moment.
Do you guys have a lot of remote positions, or is everything kind of in on premise?
Everything's on premise. We haven't done a lot of remote, mainly just because we love having the ability just to walk down the hallway and run into people, get to know people that way. We have, I think, 1 remote worker or 2 at the moment. One's kind of like a part-time role and one's a full-time. It's not our ideal just because it's much better when we can get in a room together and hash things out. Like there's great technologies available to us all today. But when like the person's, indicator light goes to red and you wanted to really talk to them, it's like, well, what are they doing right now? Like there's little things like that just kind of, pop up over time that I love being able to just also, when you get a weird piece of correspondence, just get up from my desk and go talk to somebody. So our mission right now is to kind of build within our walls. I think we're always open to remote talent. Everyone at Archer has the ability to work from home at least one day a week. So we do stuff like that, as well as just a really flexible work hours in general. But I think our goal right now is to all be under one roof as much as we can.
Let's go even more detail about your actual work environment. So I think one of the things that really caught my eye to Archer for multiple years now that I've known about you guys, even before you and I met, is just not even your company culture, but from an outside perspective, seeing the culture you guys have, from the way you communicate your brand to the way you see your employees and your team interact online, have that proudness, that pride behind being an Archer, and then everything that goes around it, from you guys' events, the things you do as a team. Let's talk about that. Is that something that you brought in, that you guys have always had since early on? And how has culture played a factor to helping you guys from maybe preventing turnover or building a stronger community? Where is the benefits, like the actual dividends of that, come back to you guys as a company?
I mean, I think that culture, for me, that's one of the main reasons why I chose to be in the agency world and kind of take the path that I did in my career, is like I wanted to work with like-minded people that were creative, fun. I wanted to work in an environment that accepted that. I think the thing that I love about Archer is we don't have a personality type. If you walk our halls, we're all wickedly different. But what we all share is a love for digital, a love for the company, a love for helping each other out. So, I think culture is something that we've always recognized as really wickedly important for our company, just to, number one, distinguish itself, but to aid in retention and aid in the ability of each of us to kind of grow within the company. So we put a lot of time into it, whether it's planning events, whether it's just kind of having as much transparency as possible about the things going on, whether it's building relationships. I think there's a lot of different management styles. One is to kind of be kind of cold and distant from your kind of employee base. I think we are very kind of warm and friendly and kind of involved in anything and everything that we can be. Because again, I think the best managers are the ones that get to know you personally. The ones that really kind of show that they have an investment in you. So we've always been centered on being a good, solid, humble, hardworking company that treats our employees well. Because, our most important asset, the bulk of our costs as a company is our people, and they have the ability to go home and not return if they choose not to. So, I think a lot of agencies take that for granted, and our mission has always been to not take that for granted and to really honor our employees. I mean, don't get me wrong, we screw some things up. We're not perfect. But I think every time that we've done something, we've learned from it, and the company's gotten even stronger for it. And now being 70 people in Wilmington, Delaware, and doing some of the work we're doing, I feel like we're really accomplished a lot together.
So let's go even more into that for a second. One of the things I like to ask a lot of times to people is, what's been the biggest failure they've overcome and learned and turned into an asset from learning? So I'm curious, based off of growing a team and what you're doing, this is definitely a harder question, but talk to me a little bit about what have you learned over your career running a team that maybe you were making a mistake earlier on, or maybe overvalued or undervalued early on, and that you found now that you have this awareness has just only significantly helped become even more of an asset for your team or with your team?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, being someone that had done it all in his career, or not done it all, I think that sounds terrible, has kind of worn a lot of different hats. I was a micromanager early in my management career. So, I was still the guy that was trying to, dot every I, cross every T. I wanted to review every single thing. I was still hands-on with all of my work. I was still doing comps and doing, mock-ups of everything as well as my team. So what I learned there is that you do have to delegate. You have to have the right people to delegate to. If you don't have the right people to delegate to and you're not comfortable there, then that's something you got to solve. And that's a tough conversation sometimes, but you're really letting everyone else down if you don't have the ability to kind of rise above the day-to-day and look at the bigger picture. So I think that's the number one thing I learned early in my management career is doing that. I think the second thing and the most important thing I've learned over the last 4 years as I've kind of gone from more involved in the day-to-day to being an owner of a company is you got to be true to you. There's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of people trying to tell you how to run your company and what to do. The reality is we're all trying to figure it out. And, I can guarantee you all the books that we read with all the different CEOs that have done amazing things, they figured it out on the job in a lot of ways too, or they took it from, past jobs in a lot of different ways. So there isn't a way to do this. What you have to do is be true to yourself and know what you hold and value and really kind of develop a company and a culture around that. I think it took me a long time to feel confident that my way was okay. And I'm still evolving that. I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. But what I do know is that for Archer to be successful, I can't treat Archer as if it was Zappos or Amazon or anything like that. I got to treat Archer like Archer, and I got to be unique to what I think drives us and what drives me.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, in the beginning, you mentioned, you had to wear a lot of hats. What was it like trying to balance all of that and stay productive and still, especially in a design role, you have, deadlines, client needs, that kind of stuff. What was it like to handle all that kind of stuff and also do all the business side of things that you were handling? How do you stay productive?
You don't, and you don't sleep very much. The simple fact of it is I was doing a bad job of doing everything well. And the way I compensated for that was I worked a lot. I ate a lot. I was up till 2 a.m. Nothing better than midnight pizza and a Diet Coke in a lot of ways. But I enjoyed that. That's a little part of the agency mystique that I think we're all told is what you need to be successful is you got to stay up and do all nighters and do some crazy hours just to get through things. And that's true early in your career, but later in your career, it really doesn't help. You're just burning yourself out.
Absolutely. I think when we started, we were working on a project a couple of years ago, an in-house kind of thing. I think I had at least one all-nighter a week. And I was like fine with that. Like I could do that, no problem. And now it just works against me more than anything.
Well, one of the things that drove me nuts early at an earlier stop was I won't say the company because they're all local, but it was an agency I was working for, and the CEO, we have a big pitch going on, and the CEO would turn to myself and, at that time, the creative director and a couple of people and say, here's what we need to do for this pitch. Go do it. We had our marching orders. We'd work all week. Probably, stay till like, 10 o'clock at night, do whatever we could do, order some pizza, maybe take some work home with us, start it all over the next day. But inevitably, every project, she'd come in on Friday, review what we did, hated it. And then we work all weekend, didn't sleep at all just to redo it again for the pitch that was on Monday. And I just said to myself, like there has to be a better way to do this. Like, can we involve you in the process?
Did you enjoy some aspect of that? Like people you were working with at least? Because that's kind of what kept us in that project going. We had fun working together, so it wasn't that big of a deal for us to be killing ourselves like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you're going through that and you're going through that as a group, we had some good parties, we roamed Philadelphia. We did some crazy things. And it was a bonding experience, but after a while things get serious. Kids come into play, marriages, relationships come into play. Sometimes you just know that your best work isn't going out the door. So that's an important thing too. So it's good for a moment in time. And I think everyone should have to put in some hours to really perfect their skills. But there is definitely different ways to handle these problems. And that definitely for me was something that I enjoyed at the moment, but something I wouldn't put myself through again. And most of the people I work with, I wouldn't ask them to do that either, unless it's something where it's early in their career and they need to perfect their skills.
Well, it's actually something you bring up here that I think a lot of early entrepreneurs and young CEOs make a mistake of is employees and team members, at the end of the day, they can give a crap about the brand and company, but you have a stake. Your DNA is in that company. It's not theirs. So you can't expect them to do the same amount of hours or output that you would, just because at the end of the day, it's your baby. And as much as they might love it and love working there, it's not their baby, right? And I think one of the things, and going back to that young CEO, the female CEO you were mentioning earlier, is a lot of times they mistake what they're asking for is not something, if they were in their position, they would be comfortable doing. So it's just something that intrigues me there, is I think that happens a lot more than that you guys are saying. Like, we did that early on, right? But we all had a stake at it. And even then, it's not sustainable long term. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast in particular probably have made that mistake of asking more out of their team than they can. It comes back to currently now, like, how do you know there's a boundary what I will do, but I know it's unreasonable for me to ask on to another team member because they're not in my position?
Well, I want to, before we jump into that, I just want to say one thing about the owner employee relationship. One thing I think that has worked well for me, especially early in my career, is that, I knew I wasn't an owner, but I treated my role in the company as one that was just as important from an output standpoint as something that the owner would. So that's one thing I think as an employee, that if you treat it like you are invested and that you really kind of put your time into it to make the company better, people will recognize that, especially if you've chosen well in your career and that you've chosen to surround yourself with good people. So that's one thing I will always say is, like, help me out, is like, I didn't have any grand plans to be an owner at 40 years old in Wilmington, Delaware, doing what I'm doing today. But every role I treated like it was important to me. And I also worked my hardest to make the company better at any time that I could. And I didn't really worry about the end results for me. I didn't worry about more money. I didn't worry about a different title. I just worked really hard to make the company better. And that has always taken care of me and taken care of my family and taken care of, my career, quite frankly.
And it's worked out for you. I mean, where you are now definitely shows that was your mentality and that's how you felt. So
absolutely. Now, on the reverse side of that, as an owner, you can't expect everyone to treat your company as you do. Everyone has different inputs and outputs. Everyone has different things that they're trying to accomplish. I think the best thing you can do is know your employee workforce, know your managers, know what everyone's trying to accomplish, and make sure that everyone kind of aligns with your goals and what you're trying to achieve within your company. So if you have a manager that you think is, someone that's probably not in for the long haul, someone who's not there to develop talent, someone that's there just for another stop on their resume, well, that's probably not a good thing for you and your culture, and something you just want to know. For employees, like, what are they trying to accomplish? If they're early in their career, what does success look like for them over the next 2 or 3 years? So it's really kind of breaking things down into the things that we all can feel good about, and we can all kind of center around and kind of push each other with. So you can't look at it just from your eyes and what you're trying to accomplish, but you got to understand what everyone else is trying to accomplish as well.
So walk us through, what is your day by day, like your average day look like from the time you wake up till the time you go to bed?
And how much Wawa is involved in that?
A lot of Wawa. Right now you can go get a classic hoagie, so you should go get one. They're on sale.
Great plug.
So a typical day is, waking up early, usually either some level of workout or some level of kind of tightening up things that I need to do for the day, just to get kind of my head on straight. Then it's making breakfast for my kids, dropping them off at school, and then getting to the office around 9:15. 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, say on a Monday, is just kind of getting everything set for the day. 10 o'clock in the morning, we have an all company meeting where all 70 of us get all together and talk about what's going on that week. So, what are the challenges? What are the wins? What are the work that's coming in? We clap for people that are celebrating great milestones, things like that. And then the rest of the day is either a collection of client meetings or kind of individual staff meetings. So, I could be meeting with Wawa to discuss campaigns that are coming up or challenges within, kind of new products that they're looking to launch, discussing, our latest launch with them. I could be talking to a new client on a new business call. What are you looking for? What are you not looking for? And then I spend a lot of time with our team. So I try not to stay in my office very much. So it's up walking around, getting to know people, seeing what's going on within the company, seeing what people are working on. Because even today, there's some times where you walk around, it's hey, did you know X, Ryan is working on this and Larone's working on that. You guys should talk. It's very similar. Or, hey, there's some complementary stuff that we can do there. So a lot of just kind of fact finding and getting to know people. And then I spend a lot of time with the managers that report to me just to kind of understand where they're at with their goals, where they're at with their teams. There's always something going on. So, there's always different challenges or opportunities. So working with that. And then I do a lot of stuff kind of on the external side. So things like podcasts or, talking to different kind of publishers or things like that as well, just to kind of get Archer's name out there.
Are you involved in the design side of things at also, or do you do any of that on the freelance stuff?
So I review things, kind of give my 2 cents on everything. I can't say that I've designed anything personally for Archer in probably the last 2 or 3 years, which is a big step for me. I do some side stuff once in a while. I'm not going to say when or who I've done it for, but I'm Craigslist. Once in a while, people post up there that they're looking for some design help, and just for the heck of it, I'll send them a logo once in a while or a business card treatment or something like that, just because it's fun. And then I don't have to do revisions. You can either take it or not. That's something I stole from Draplin. I thought was really cool is he would do some of those things once in a while, and it inspired me to once in a while. I think I do it 4 or 5 times a year where I'll just design something for someone that is either a startup business or something, and just give back in that way. That's a lot of fun. But no, I don't do a lot of personal design stuff. It's just more kind of direction at this point, and just making sure that we're looking at everything from a more conceptual or strategic level.
Cool. And just because I'm curious, is Archer Group responsible for the Hoagie Fest commercials?
No, we don't do any of the TV. The commercials are a lot of fun. We have a great partner called the Richards Group down in Dallas, Texas, that does a lot of the traditional stuff. But we were there for the invention of the Hoagie Fest. We did help define all its look and feel, and we do all of the online pieces of that. And we do sneak into some traditional once in a while. You may or may not see some billboards from us in the near future that have a social kind of little angle to them. But no, we're usually on the digital side. Anything with a screen within a Wawa, we do. I
was going to say the POS, right? The menu system. 'Cause I remember, I think I was probably 7 or 8 when that system was introduced. And I remember because we used to have to go up to the counters and say our order to the girls behind the counter. And the first day that they introduced the system, I started talking to the lady, and I was like, "I want an Italian hoagie," and she was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "You have to put it in the touchscreen," and I was like, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And then obviously I fell in love with that. And it's a great experience too, and it makes things so much better, I think.
Yeah, one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my career, which is so funny to say, but I mean, I have a lot of love for Wawa, but I think it was about 4 years ago, we got to redesign the touchscreens from where they really were, kind of like when they launched, back when you probably ordered your first hoagie. I mean, they had not really been redesigned.
I remember the first day that interface came out and being so, because I had been in interface design for some time now, and I remember being so happy about seeing that refresh. It was really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really cool to do. We also have some other stuff that we're working on with them as well to kind of even enhance that further. But that was a lot of fun, and even then, I mean, I think it is noticeably different. You can actually see the hoagie you're ordering to a certain degree now. It gives you a little bit more information and stuff like that. But changing user interface still bothers people. I mean, they like those yellow bubbles. So we had reports of people hitting the screen once in a while and things like that. So there were some UI challenges there for us because I mean, people just don't like change. But I think overall, it's been a big win for us and for Wawa to redesign that.
So publicly, so what you can talk about publicly, what's been probably the best success story you've had at Archer that you've done for a client?
Publicly, I won't say the specific client, but we do a lot of work in the financial services industry. Everyone from JP Morgan Chase to Morgan Stanley to Prudential to, I mean, you name them, we probably have worked with them at one time or another. So that one big win for us is that we do a lot on the financial side. We do a lot of the in-store or kind of like on the commercial side too. But on the banking side, we have one of our largest relationships really start as an email assignment. Hey, let's get to know you. Let's do some email work. We'll do some email strategy for you. And it was a series of probably, $2,500 emails that we did for them, and really kind of let them get to know us and how we solve problems and how we approach things. And that client is now turned into a multi-million-dollar a year client based off of those email assignments that we did early for them early on.
And what is it like working with those? Like the financial industry, I feel like they're really rigid about the work that need done, and so you guys don't do RFPs, right? So, is it something that you have to say early on, like we're not going to start our relationship that way, so you're going to have to do it the way we want, or are they typically like firm on their approach?
They're usually firm, but I think I find that again, since we have vertical expertise, we're usually not part of just a blind RFP. A lot of times they're coming to us because they've seen some of the work we've done, or they've been referred to us by other people in the marketplace. So we don't get a lot of blind RFPs through them. Usually the blind RFPs come from verticals we don't have as much experience in, but they think our skills could kind of naturally be leveraged. So usually in the financial side, it's not, I worked in pharma for a number of years. That to me is like not fun, not very regulated, something that actually is in our bylaws that we'll never do. We don't want anything to do with pharmaceutical marketing, quite frankly. Not because it's evil or anything. It's just mainly because there's so many clients, so many companies in the area that do it. We'd much rather focus on all the other clients, and we're happy to take on everything else. So we decided as a differentiator, we just don't do pharmaceutical work. And that actually helps with recruiting a lot too, because a lot of people after a while want to get out of it. So on the financial side, it's usually kind of just getting the relationship started. They have a lot of particulars from like an MSA or a contractual standpoint, obviously. They're big banks, so they have to be protective of their data. They have a lot of security regulations that you have to go through, a lot of ways that they expect you to develop or kind of like keep their information secure. So we're careful in that way. And that usually takes a while, but once we get in there, we know them pretty well. We know how it all works. So it's not really a holdback for creative or kind of like how we can problem solve for them.
So overall, one of the questions I ask every single guest that we have on this show, no exception for you, is when it's all said and done, when your career's over and you look back, what is it you want your legacy to be? Like, what do you want people to remember you by?
For me, I think, so one of the people that I really admire most in this area or this region is a guy named Brad Aronson, who is the owner of friend of mine as well. And one of the things that I love about Brad is that if you run into any of his former employees at any time, they all speak very highly of him. They all hold him near and dear. He's still very approachable for them. And someone that, they still turn to for, advisement and things like that. So I think for me that, Archer was a good company, treated people well, that I was a good manager and helped people grow. I want that to be my legacy. I mean, I'm not looking to take over the world. Really what I want to do is make the lives and the atmosphere for any of our employees better than it was from any of the other companies they worked for. And I want them to hold that dear. And, years down the road, I want them to look back at their time with Archer and just say, wow, I learned a lot there. Or, hey, Todd really helped me out. That's really what I want my legacy to be.
As a big sports fan, because I know you're a huge Miami Dolphins fan, man. Yeah,
unfortunately.
Well, try to be a
That's what I said earlier.
One of my questions: have you ever worked with anything sports related at Archer? Like any sports franchises, leagues, anything like that?
Not a ton. We had some early on. I think when the Soul was coming in, that was something that came across my desk that we were looking to do some work with, but budget really wasn't there, so I was a little sad about that. I pitched the Miami Dolphins a couple times, but it didn't really kind of get together. I personally worked on the Nike tour early in my career, so that was a lot of fun. So I think there's been some things that have popped up. We did some work with Penn Mutual. They sponsored the rugby, all the rugby stuff that was going on here in Philadelphia over the last year. So, and that was a lot of fun to work on. And rugby is a sport that I didn't know a ton about, other than they threw great parties in college. So it was a lot of fun to kind of get to know the sport a little bit better and go to some events and things like that as well. So that's something that, we've enjoyed. Wawa's now has a relationship with the Eagles that we're helping them on the social media side with. So there's been some small stuff.
I want to go with the Eagles, man, as a Dolphins fan.
I don't hate the Eagles. I mean, if they were the Jets and Patriots, we might have some problems. But I have thick skin because my CFO is a Bills fan. So I just got to deal with things.
My parents live up in Syracuse, so I'm used to those Bill fans, man. Okay. I tell you what, though, they are hardcore. Those Bill fans, they're so under the radar.
They are, and he is hardcore. I mean, every year he and I go on a trip. We either go up to Miami or go to Buffalo. We switch off each year and basically give each other a hard time the whole time. Because especially for me,
Miami, right? Because or Buffalo early in the season, like September.
I got to tell you. He definitely gets the better end of that deal. He gets to go to Miami, and I get drug up to Buffalo. So and Buffalo's been beating us the last 3 or 4 games, so it's not been very fun for me. But yeah, I have thick skin. I like the Eagles a lot. They're probably my second favorite team. But I gotta, I'll always keep it real for Miami.
Did you get to the Eagles Dolphins game earlier this year in Philly?
I did not. I had the chance to get tickets, but I decided to have a party at the house and watch the Dolphins beat the Eagles from the comfort of my own home and my own food.
Yeah, it was a rough season, man, as an Eagles fan. But
rough for Miami here too. So
yeah, I'm kind of concerned for both our franchises right now, but we'll see what happens. All right, so Elijah Harry actually had another question for you. He wants to know, what do you think of internet marketing companies? And he used an example being Yodel, but I think he's being relative to any type of internet marketing companies compared to you guys.
I can't hate on anyone. I think everyone has their own kind of like specialties and things like that. I can't say that I'm overly familiar with Yodel, offhand. Again, I think a lot of companies try to be more than who they are. I think everyone has to kind of know what their specialty is. I think the difference between an Archer and an internet-focused marketing company is that we're a little bit more broad. We're a little bit more strategy-based. So we're going to come in there, understand your business. And when I say understand your business, that's probably the most crucial part of what we do is we're very business-centric and business-focused. So we'll understand your business and we'll come back to you and recommend things to you based off of hitting your ROI numbers or hitting your KPIs versus just marketing tactics that we wrote out for 20 other customers. So it's a very customized approach with us based off of our experience and, based off of, again, what you're trying to do within your business.
So I'm familiar with KPIs, but for those listening who has really no marketing background, can you walk them through what KPI is and more particular the type of KPIs you think are the best metrics to look for when it comes to marketing?
Sure. I mean, it really depends on what we're trying to do. But if we're on a website, if it's e-commerce, then you're looking at things like, again, click-throughs, what your purchase funnel looks like, how much money you're spending on the ad, and how many people are following that through to the actual purchase. So it's really kind of KPIs are really sitting down and understanding from digital, what are the things that you want to drive, you want your brand to have happen on either your website or your mobile app, and measuring those on a regular basis to see what marketing tactics you're rolling out and what kind of improves those KPIs or gives you an uptick in what you're trying to accomplish. So, it's really just goals more than anything. It's like, what are your goals for your site or your property, and are we achieving them or not?
So when you go about KPIs in particular, are you guys big advocates of A/B testing, doing different assumptions? Like, what's your mindset when it comes to like doing certain campaigns or strategies?
Sure. So, I mean, it depends. If you're a big client that is needs to have a big splash when you're kind of rolling into the market and you don't have a lot of time for test and learn, we'll roll in and we'll do a lot of upfront usability testing and user testing and research to really kind of make sure that we're going into market with something we feel is going to be successful. And a lot of that is, again, feedback from your customers. But if it's one of those things where we can get into market and test and learn and evolve over time, we do a lot of A/B testing. We do a lot of message testing, a lot of different things just to make sure that we're always looking for different ways to kind of optimize your landing page or your website experience or your app experience.
So as the industry evolves over the years ahead, especially technology, I think with VR, live streaming, a lot more photography, a lot more of collecting metrics, more interactive stuff, Internet of Things. One of my questions for you in particular is, where do you see your industry going in marketing, especially what you guys do, but as well what you're offering to your customers? Like, where do you see it evolving? Where do you see it going?
I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer that. So, I mean, I think that the need for better content, the need for video content, all those things are things that are going to continue to increase over time as you have different channels and different things you're trying to take advantage of. So the continued need for strong analytics. Am I doing the right things? Am I doing them on the right channels? Am I doing it at the right time of day with the right markets? That's really important as well. I think the big thing for agencies, and there's been a couple of articles about this recently, is to get better at understanding business. It's not just a creative challenge anymore. It's not Mad Men style, just create a great ad and hope that, people buy your product. It's really about kind of understanding business, understanding KPIs, understanding what tactics are going to drive customers for you, and really getting scientific or getting the data behind it. I think that's going to be something that continues to grow in importance. We hear big data and all kinds of generic stuff every day, but the reality is, if you're a marketer, it used to be really easy for you. You would buy a yellow book ad, you'd buy a billboard, you'd buy a magazine. Boom, I'm done. Magazine ad, I'm done. Some TV. Now, I mean, if you think about, I got to reach my target audience. Well, they could be on Snapchat. They could be, spread across 50 different channels. And, you got to know the right ones. And it's going to take a little bit of trial and error and a little bit of research. And you need a good partner to help you kind of understand all that and support the modern marketer.
What are your thoughts on Twitter and its current state and their struggles with monetizing?
Twitter is an important channel for us and a lot of our clients. But you got to know that Twitter, skews more male. It skews older, that it skews, towards certain types of content and certain types of information. So I think Twitter's going to be and continues to be an important part of our social media content mix. But you can't treat Twitter like your other channels. Twitter for us is very different from Snapchat, very different audience, younger female on Snapchat, older male on Twitter. And we use both of those channels effectively based off of, again, what we're trying to accomplish for our clients. So I don't even get involved with kind of their financial challenges or how they're trying to monetize. It's really kind of what audience can I get there? What can I deliver value to my clients through that channel? And if not, I don't use it. And if I can, I use it.
Do you guys have an ideal social network that you guys just loved, or do you see it going to be something you're just fascinated with?
We love them all. They're all our children in one way or another. What's that?
You love Google Plus?
I don't use it a lot, honestly. I use it for the occasional hangout and things like that. But Google Plus, was a play for us with SEO a little bit. It's a play for us just kind of understand because of the Google infrastructure. I think right now for us, Snapchat is probably the one where we're spending the most time. It's a lot of fun. We're buying geo filters and, we're doing different kind of stories and different things like that. So that's probably the one that's the most active for us at the moment. But, Facebook is very strong. We do a lot of stuff there as well. So I can't say that we have a favorite. We just kind of harness them all differently based off of what we're trying to accomplish with our clients.
So I've really gone all in Snapchat in probably the last 6 to 8 months because right now the market is not saturated, right? You have their attention. So it's interesting to me that you're talking about buying geo filters. Can you talk a little bit about like some of the strategies you've implemented and like what you guys maybe have experimented with or seen as early success stories with Snapchat?
Well, a lot of our clients are kind of, again, like on the regional side or maybe they're in verticals that aren't overly social savvy. So a lot of times it's education. You could do this. We wouldn't recommend it, but you could do this. So we'll do stuff like that. We'll also, like someone like Wawa, where we'll go in and say, like, does it make sense? Are we doing a push in a certain market? Are we doing pushes with certain stores? What are our fans doing? Does a geo filter make sense? So, we'll go in and present the idea and kind of, present the idea of custom filters and things like that for Wawa based off of, again, things that they're trying to do with their marketing or their mobile strategy.
So Josh Lopez asks, do you believe mobile is where the most attention is? Are you getting any results with traditional ads in the last 5 months?
Well, we don't do a lot of traditional, just to kind of put it out there. And I'm sure there's a lot of companies that are getting a lot out of traditional. I honestly think digital is the future of pretty much any kind of marketing communication. So that's what I'm betting on with my company. I do believe that mobile is extremely important and should be the centerpiece of every single marketer's pocketbook and strategy. I can guarantee you in the course of us doing this talk, we've all looked at our phones probably 20 times. I know Josh looked at it once or twice. So
actually put that Snapchat content out there, man. You're talking about some meta stuff.
Well, there you go.
To get the funnel here. I'm curious how many are actually out of the 412 that's listening to the blab itself are from Snapchat. But yeah, no, you're 100% right there.
So it's one of those things where, I think I thought it was hilarious. Red Tenimer, a local agency here, did a public service announcement about putting your phone away over the holiday or Sunday for Valentine's Day. The reality is mobile has, we all have the ability to, when we're bored, have something in our pocket to keep us entertained, whether it's a game or looking up, the Dolphins sports score or Snapchatting about something cool or your meal. Mobile is something that's always around us and we have the ability to pull out of our pocket at any time. And most of us are really bad with that. So I think you have to understand that mobile is extremely important to everyone today. And maybe in some ways that disappears a little bit over time, but I don't see that happening. I think people will, continue to invest more and more time into mobile.
By the way, you see Josh Lopez is sharing. He actually came here from Snapchat. So, for example, there's your ROI right there. As we're doing this marketing talk. So here's a unique question for you, a little bit of a curveball here. If you could recommend one book or one podcast to podcast. I said podcast. Podcast. There we go.
Podcast.
Yeah, so it's podcast to anybody listening to the show that's an inspiring entrepreneur, a young leader, CEO. What would you recommend?
Well, you gotta recommend the podcast, right? That's you gotta go there.
Obviously,
that's the default, man.
That's the default. I'm not a big. I've read a lot of different books. The ones that I think were the most revealing for me were the ones where we did personality tests for each of our managers and for myself just to understand our strengths and weaknesses. So we did Strength Finders 2.0 recently. That was a lot of fun to just kind of bond over. I enjoy things like that where we can kind of like get more interactive rather than me just sitting there, taking in all this knowledge that someone's given me. I think I've read every Seth Godin book or, I think I've read every kind of like digital marketing book that there is out there. None of them really kind of jump out, quite frankly, as something where I'm like, wow, that's the one. I still have a lot of respect for Ogilvy and advertising. That man, he had a way about him and a confidence in how he wanted advertising to run throughout his organization. And I have a lot of respect for that book and what he was able to put out there in those standards. And quite frankly, I know a lot of people that work for that agency that they still follow today. So that was pretty amazing as well. So I don't know. I'm a big fan. I read a ton. My RSS feed, and I still use RSS. I probably have.
So 10. Google Fever, or you Google Feeder person at one point?
I was at one point, and then I stuck on Newsfire, so I just still rock that. But I probably have 10,000 different publications and blogs and things that I follow on a daily basis. So I usually take 2 or 3 hours a day just to kind of go through all of those. Not only at work but at home as well. So that's usually where the bulk of my reading happens.
It's interesting you bring this up. So one of the unique things is I barely read myself. And I'm a true believer of you learn from experience or you learn from the people you talk to. It's actually one of the reasons why we do this podcast, for example, is because I'm a big believer the people we surround ourselves with and that we're fortunate to be friends with. They've been around the block. They know what you're doing. And you can steal some of those things to your own playbook, right? And that's why we also put out all this type of content. We do this podcast or pushing on the blog. Our social media outlets are pushing different type of content. So I believe there's different preferences, right? So you got to create content to all the different native experiences so you can get that value out of those unique audiences. And that value brings that value proposition back to your brand. So that's always been kind of like our method of madness and why we do what we do. Obviously, the part selfish thing, but at the end of the day, we're a business. But at the same point in time, our moral, our social goal is we want to inspire as many people as possible, be as impactful as possible, leave a brand that helps people, that makes them become entrepreneurs, build products. So it's interesting you bring that up, and audiobook stuff like that. I just think it's all fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is for me too, and I love that we're just so Christopher knows we're not dog training on here. So I wanted to point that out. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a terrible dog.
You're not a dog whisperer, man? I always thought you were a dog whisperer.
No, I'm terrible at it. Terrible. So it's one of those things where for me, what I love is I love the personal interaction. You get to know people, get to know what they've kind of learned. I've interviewed when I went to take the job at Archer as an owner. I knew that things were going to change for me. So the very first thing I did is go back and talk to all the owners of the companies I worked for along my career. And I probably talked to like 4 or 5 different people just to say, like, what was the big change for you? Like, what did you learn? What did you do to kind of get through it? And those were by far more inspirational, more helpful for me than any book that I was able to read, because I read a lot too. And I looked at them, I'm like, I got halfway through and I'm like, all right, well, I kind of get where you're going with this. I'm good. Whereas some of the kind of personal quotes and stories that people shared to me, I still repeat to this day. One of them that I loved was, again, one of the former owners. She came to me and she said, hey, one of the number one things I learned is, like, don't wear your emotions on your sleeves. Like, walk in every day with a smile on your face and leave every day with a smile on your face, because how much people are influenced by your mood, you wouldn't ever know or realize. So that one is really important for me, and that I learned from her is, like, you just got to, always put on like a good face, because you don't know if that junior level employee is kind of like looking at you and like fearful of you or fearful of what's going on within the company. So like things like that you wouldn't learn from a book. Or, I mean, maybe if you're getting there, but it's like, page, 53 of 262. So I can get there a little faster by just having that personal kind of connection.
Now,
one of the
what
other
would you say is the number one thing? Yeah, I was going to ask, what was the number one thing you think you've learned over your career that you relate to yourself and would share to others? If someone asks, what's the biggest thing you've learned?
I think the biggest thing I've learned is to be humble and patient. There's a lot of people when they get to my level that want to run in and solve every problem, want to be the big swinging dick in the room. Sorry if I'm pissing off any dog trainers. But for me, it's like you can't run a business or an organization like that, especially one where you're focused on creativity or really kind of getting the best out of people and solving problems. Like, you don't know where that solve's going to come from. So you got to be really kind of patient and humble about yourself and your role. I mean, there still are times where you can kind of express yourself and lead. But 9 times out of 10, you're kind of listening and taking things in and making people aware of things versus being the loudmouth in the room.
Great question. So Eddie, to see if you have any other questions, my friend, before we wrap this up.
I don't think so. I think I'm good, actually. This has been a great conversation, Todd. I really enjoyed talking to you. You're a really interesting guy, and I think I see a lot of parallels between Chop Dog and Archer Group. And I hope, because we're a much younger company, I hope that we are moving in the same direction you guys are as far as how much you've grown.
Well, I will add on top of this. Todd, had a pleasure to actually meet you face to face a few months back, and as I kind of you and I kind of talked a little bit before that previously, like just connected. So we've always looked up the Archer Group, I think, as just a source of inspiration for us, as like, even though at the end of the day we're 2 different companies, like 2 different industries, and you really look at it, as Eddie mentioned, I've always saw some parallels, and we take a lot of inspiration of how you guys basically handle yourselves as professionals. I think is the way to look at it. Almost as like how a professional athlete, a prospect's looking at an athlete emulating that success for their own game, even if it's in a different sport. It's kind of the way we approach it. So, for everyone listening, you have to look up the Archer Group. Amazing company, and the show notes will include all of it. But yeah, what you're doing, man, it's absolutely amazing, absolutely humbling. And the last thing I'll ask you is, how can people reach you or learn more about the Archer Group so we can plug it into show notes so they know how to find you?
Sure. Well, our website is always a great place to start, archer-group.com. I'm on Twitter, Todd Miller. You can hit me up there. You can also email me. I'm a very kind of open guy. So if you have any questions or thoughts or whatever, tmiller@archer-group.com is how to reach me. That's pretty much it. We have a lot of respect for Chop Dog. I think one of the things that I've always admired is, again, how you guys approach projects, and I love the entrepreneurial side of your business and how you're helping out companies that are trying to take that next step and really kind of get the most out of mobile and apps and things like that. So that's that passion that you guys all bring, and the way you guys go about it is something that's really exciting for us to see too. I love the honesty, and I love how you love to share too. And I think that's something that more companies could do. So as much as you guys have respect for me, I have a ton of respect for you guys and what you're building as well.
That's awesome. Thanks, dude.
Well, listen, man, and as we continue to grow, we're going to definitely have you on again. Maybe next time we'll do it live at Archer's offices. That could be actually really fun.
Yeah, I apologize. The snow kind of snowed me out. I didn't actually end up in the office.
Yeah, no worries.
So you get the boring backdrop of the window. So
no worries. I still have to join you in Wilmington one day. When it gets warmer out, I plan to go down there, stop down for a day.
Please do. We're right next to the train station, so it's a nice, easy walk for you.
I'll bring some cheesesteaks for everyone, man.
Perfect. We're big fan. Federal Donuts is our favorite. So if you want to,
Federal. So I actually live about a block from a Federal Donuts. So
ooh, that's dangerous.
I've actually. So wait, you're gonna hate me. I've never been.
Really?
I've never been to Federal Donuts. No, I pass it all the time. It's a block from here, man. And that's the end of the podcast.
And there you go. We're gone.
Yes. You got to go.
I'll grab one for you, and I'll Snapchat it to you. So this way we're marketing it just as well. It'll be very meta.
Sounds good. That would be great.
All right. So last thing. So this is the way too early, premature prediction. What do you think about your Dolphins next year? As of right now, what are you thinking?
I'm hoping for a one-game improvement at this point. I think it's a new coach. Honestly, I got to see how free agency and draft go, but I'm hoping to go from our 6-win season to 7 or 8. But I heard today that the owner wants to be in the playoffs in 3 years, so we got to get moving.
It's interesting for him to say a timetable like that. You never really see franchises put a timetable too far in the future, because isn't that a put off if you're a fan? If you think about it,
it is.
They did it to us in Philly. They did it to us with the Sixers.
Let's be honest. If your team isn't getting in the playoffs within 3 years, the fans are going to say that no matter what. So,
well, I guess it's the Sixers never actually put a timetable. What they're doing, but they've never said 5 years from now is our playoff goal.
We all say it was more fan.
Yeah, after Iverson left, let's be honest, we all kind of said, we're not going to be so good for a while.
As long as they're not lying and being unrealistic, I think I'm cool with that. Because if they're we're going to make the playoffs next year, we're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals next year, I would be like, what do you mean?
Well, I will respect this. I will say this about sport franchise. You can tell the teams are just trying to put together pieces to stay relevant. I think Kansas City Chiefs is almost an example to me of a team I wouldn't want to be, because they put enough pieces to be a playoff team, but they're never deep, right? They're not going to be a team that's not going to go too far. And even though this year was amazing what they did, I'm trying to think of another equivalent. Maybe the Jets is probably another example of a team that seems to always get just enough to be relevant, but they're not deep enough to be a true contender. So I do respect things like the Sixers, what they're doing. We're just saying, we want to become a dynasty. And how do you have to do that? We're going to stay in the trenches for a long time and really focus on trying to build elite players and then get to that point, right? We're going to take 2 steps back that most people are afraid to do.
I got to tell you, one of the things that as a sports fan that I enjoy more now than ever is really kind of getting in the sense of front office. Having to deal with people all day long and kind of deal with resourcing and deal with people at Archer. Not that I would ever run it like the Eagles run it or the Dolphins run it, where but I have a lot of respect for it, and I really love getting to know kind of the thinking and what people are doing. So this is actually my favorite part of the NFL season, to be honest with you, just because now is when you're getting the sense of what's the draft board look like, what kind of players are they looking for, how are they going to cater that to the coach's needs. How are they going about finding them? How are they evaluating that? I really geek out at this part of it because I really think that, this is how your season is made, is really how you approach these problems to solve these problems in the off season.
So it's interesting you bring this up. I'm a huge fan of how sports have gone, like sabermetrics, data metrics, and then as a fan translating that to English. And in fact, with our own business at ChopDog, we're collecting almost every metric and figuring out the narratives behind it to identify it. So as just a sports fan, I think if it wasn't for sports, that competitive drive, I feel like you learn a lot from competitive drive and how to deal with it through sports, which has been an asset for us. And then B, that metric. Metrics always been around business, but the way they truly break into a science and you can figure out narrative, I feel like that's been two assets that's actually helped our careers and as a business grow that a lot of people underestimate, like the power of it.
Oh, we geek on metrics every day. I mean, we're highly competitive and that's really how we compete today. I mean, one little kind of like small thing, we got involved to an agency field day in Philly like 2 years ago. So it was us, it was O3 World, it was Blue Cadet, it was Sear, and I think one or two more. And we actually didn't get invited back the next year because honestly, we were that competitive. We won. And we were kind of like, we were like screaming and yelling and we were so excited. And then I think all the other agencies were just scared of us and a little like overwhelmed with how competitive we were. So we didn't get invited back the next year. So yeah, we're
That's
very
awesome.
Driven. We're very different.
You raised the bar, man. That's what you did. You took the bar for agencies up to here.
They didn't.
Like, I think it goes back to company culture, man. I think that's one of the
does.
things that I love about the Archer Group is just, I've met so many amazing people from you guys who just have that pride and that excitement, enthusiasm. It's the opposite where you think agencies. I think a lot of people think of agency life as kind of like that soul, like drenching, grindless gear working around the clock. So it's refreshing. And I think what you're doing is the modern way of how to run a service-based company.
Yeah, and we have to be competitive. I mean, we treat every client's dollar as if it's our own. We want to win at everything. And, I feel sorry for the companies that don't get that and aren't as involved with that kind of stuff. I mean, to me, I thought it was humorous that we didn't get the invite back. And I love it because it's just like they can't hang with us. So, I love that trophy.
That was a business move.
Probably more than anything. And I think, I understand it. Everyone has different needs and drivers, but, for us, we are who we are. We will kick butt for our clients and we will be involved in their business and involved with every little metric, any way that we can bring more value to them. And that's just how we've grown. And that's why we are, pretty much the largest independent digital agency in this area.
Todd, I think you just gave me a great business idea, man, that we need to get into, which is a agency Olympics here in the Northeast. I think this is our opportunity. There's clearly an area of opportunity here for us to do this.
I'm in. That actually, when we competed last time, it was not far from you. So, I mean, I'd love to kind of bring it in with with agencies or with businesses that aren't scared.
I could totally get the Philly tech scene, New York tech scene on board. We can even make it region-based, different divisions, Philly, DC,
Perfect.
Baltimore, New York. And
We're
awesome,
in,
my friend.
definitely.
All right, this is it. It's been decided. You're
It's going to affect my hiring process from now on.
Yeah,
There
we
you
got to
go.
start looking at prospects.
You got to be careful, man. We got some good athletes at the Archer Group.
We got to start practicing like tug of war and stuff. Like, this is a real thing we got to work on now, guys.
Yeah, I think there was tug of war, kickball, volleyball. I think there's some beer pong involved. So
What about adult Foursquare? I think adult Foursquare could be pretty epic.
there we go. We can do that. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll have a water drinking contest. Josh is already really good at that, as you can tell by that glass.
I'm working on my game.
I'm a little bit of an older guy, so for me, I just don't know how you haven't gone to the bathroom yet.
I'm all into those macros, man, and like I said, it's about like trying to get 3 of these full days. Like again, this thing's bigger than my head, so it's great. This is awesome. But
I drink a lot of water, but that's intimidating. So you go.
So it's on a serious note, Todd. Thank you, and for everyone listening, you can catch all our live scheduled shows such as this on blab.im/ChopDog Studios or go to chopdog.com/podcast. Again, this was episode 005 of the podcast with Todd Miller of the Archer Group. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.